There comes a moment, often on an ordinary day, when something invisible shifts. You can't point to a single event, yet the air around your life feels subtly altered, as if a curtain has been disturbed by a wind you cannot see. The conversations that once pulled you in now slide past you like static. The familiar rooms of your existence feel slightly off, as if the furniture has been moved a few inches in the night. It is not that you have become better or worse, you have simply become different. Jung used the word synchronicity to describe meaningful coincidences, events that line up with your inner state in a way that feels too precise to be random. You begin to notice them now. A book appears in your path that speaks to your exact confusion. A phrase overheard in a cafe mirrors a thought you have never dared to say aloud. A dream repeats a theme that your waking life is trying to ignore. These are not just curiosities, they are the psyche's way of saying, the life you've been living is too small for who you are becoming. The persona, the social mask you have worn for years, is starting to crack. The persona is necessary. It is the face you learn to present to survive. The agreeable one, the competent one, the entertaining one, the one who knows how to belong. For a long time it worked. You laughed in the right places, worked hard, kept relationships going, played your role. Outwardly, nothing seemed wrong. Inwardly, however, a subtle hollowness began to spread. Moments that used to feel filled with connection now leave an aftertaste of emptiness. You leave a gathering, and instead of feeling nourished, you feel oddly erased, as if you were present but not truly there. This is the psyche's way of telling you that the persona is no longer enough. The mask has grown too tight for the soul it is trying to cover. At first you might explain this away as fatigue, introversion, or simply being in a mood. But the feeling persists. You find yourself craving quiet for reasons you cannot articulate. You start cancelling plans not out of malice or laziness, but because something in you recoils at the thought of spending another evening repeating conversations your soul has outgrown. When you finally allow yourself to sit alone in a room without distraction, something surprising happens. The expected loneliness does not arrive. Instead, a strange kind of relief unfurls inside your chest. Your nervous system loosens by a small but unmistakable degree. You breathe more deeply. Time feels different here, slower and more honest. In that silence, you begin to encounter what Jung called the self, the organizing center of the psyche, deeper than the ego, wiser than your conscious intentions. The self does not shout. It does not argue. It simply waits for you to notice that life lived only through the eyes of others is too narrow. As you sit with yourself, you begin to sense currents of feeling, images, and half-formed insights that were always there, drowned out by noise. Memories surface that you thought were insignificant. Old dreams return with new weight. You start to see that your longing for solitude is not a defect but a signal. The soul wants its own company. Most people fear this territory. They fill every gap with noise, every pause with a screen, every weekend with plans, because the silence threatens to show them who they really are beneath their roles. But you are beginning to see that what rises in the quiet is not your enemy. It is the unlived life, the neglected truths, the banished feelings that have been exiled to the basement of the psyche. This is the first step of individuation, the lifelong process Jung described in which the ego gradually aligns with the self, in which you stop living as an imitation of what others need and begin to live as a revelation of what you truly are. It is an initiation, and initiations rarely look impressive from the outside. They often begin in small, almost invisible refusals. No, I won't go. No, I won't perform. No, I won't abandon myself to keep the peace. These refusals are not acts of rebellion against the world. They are gestures of loyalty to your own center. From them, a new pattern of life will slowly unfold, one that others may find strange, distant, or even threatening. But the psyche knows what it is doing. When the soul grows quiet, it is not dying. It is gathering itself for the journey down and in. As you deepen into the quiet, the withdrawal from external noise becomes more pronounced, and something even more profound begins to emerge. Your capacity for silence. Not the silence of avoidance, not the silence that hides in shame or fear, but a silence that holds power, depth, and clarity. This is the silence Jung spoke of when he referred to the descent into the unconscious. The conscious mind, with all its distractions and social niceties, is set aside. Here, you are no longer pretending, no longer keeping up appearances. Instead, you learn to listen not only to the words others speak, but to the deeper currents that run beneath them. You begin to understand that language, when spoken too freely, often reduces the mystery of life. Words, no matter how carefully chosen, can never fully encapsulate the sacredness of a moment, a feeling, an insight. In this silence, you reclaim the energy that was once dispersed in endless chatter. Jung's concept of libidinal economy becomes vividly apparent to you, the understanding that psychic energy is finite and that every interaction, every word spoken, drains this vital force unless it is invested in something truly meaningful. Over time, you stop wasting your energy on social pleasantries, debates that lead nowhere, or arguments that only serve to bolster the ego. Instead, you learn to speak with intention. When you do speak, your words seem to carry weight, as if they are charged with the resonance of your inner world. Those who listen closely can sense it. This is no longer a voice seeking approval or validation, but one that speaks from a deep place of personal authority. At the same time, you feel the pull of your own sensitivity. The world of the collective, of noise, distraction, and superficiality becomes more difficult to navigate. The crowds you once frequented, the gatherings that once seemed exciting, now feel oppressive. It's not that you have become misanthropic or that you no longer enjoy company. It's simply that your inner frequency has shifted and you can no longer attune yourself to the psychic static that vibrates in such spaces. You are attuned to a finer, subtler frequency now, one that cannot be heard over the cacophony of the outside world. You have learned that your energy is precious and you will no longer allow it to be siphoned off in places that do not nourish you. This is not to say that you are fragile or weak. On the contrary, this withdrawal is an act of strength. In Jungian terms, it is a recognition that the ego is not the center of the universe, and that true strength comes from the self, not from the approval or admiration of others. To be sensitive to the energy of a room, to the moods and intentions of those around you, is not a weakness. It is a gift. It is the ability to perceive the invisible threads that bind us all, to understand the psychic contagion that flows through the collective unconscious. You can feel the emotional residue left behind by past conflicts, the unspoken tensions, the latent fears that still linger in spaces. And you recognize that to remain in these environments is to risk absorbing more than your fair share of their emotional burden. So, you choose to withdraw, not out of fear, but out of self-preservation. The ability to absorb and transmute the psychic energy of others is a skill that must be managed carefully. You understand that being sensitive is not a curse, it is a sacred responsibility. In this heightened state of awareness, you begin to notice something else. Your relationships start to change. People, too, are attuned to your new presence. Some are drawn to you, magnetized by the quiet strength that you exude. Others, however, find themselves repelled. Those who rely on the persona, their masks of approval, validation, and social conformity, find your presence disorienting. They cannot understand why you no longer seek their validation or why you no longer feel compelled to explain yourself. Your silence, which once would have been seen as rude or distant, now becomes a shield. It is a form of energetic protection, a way to preserve the sanctity of your inner world while still participating in the outer one. But not everyone will understand this. The more you shed the layers of the persona, the more you will find yourself misunderstood. Jung understood this well. The process of individuation, the journey toward becoming the self, often requires a solitary path, one that is fraught with misunderstandings and isolation. The world wants you to be like everyone else, to wear the same mask, to follow the same script, but your soul knows better. It knows that you cannot continue to live according to the expectations of others. As you walk this path, you will encounter people who simply do not resonate with you anymore, whose presence feels empty, even draining. When this happens, you will know that the time has come to let go. This is not an act of cruelty, but an act of integrity. To remain in a relationship that no longer serves you is to betray your own soul, and the soul cannot be betrayed without consequences. In the same way that you have distanced yourself from the noise of the external world, you begin to distance yourself from the relationships that drain you. This is not to say that you will walk away from everyone, but you will begin to feel the natural, inevitable separation from certain people who no longer align with your frequency. The ego may resist this at first. It may try to convince you that you should stay in these relationships for the sake of social harmony, or because you are afraid of appearing cold. But the self, that deeper, wiser part of you, knows better. It knows that to continue in these connections would be to betray your own truth. You have learned that true intimacy, true connection, arises not from the need to be loved or admired, but from the ability to stand in your own truth and invite others to do the same. As you walk this path of individuation, you will find that the relationships that remain are the ones that resonate with your true self, not with your persona. These relationships will be more authentic, more nourishing, and ultimately more fulfilling, because they are based on mutual respect for each other's inner sovereignty. As you continue this journey inward, you notice something else begin to shift, your very sense of identity. The persona, once so tightly woven to the expectations of society, begins to dissolve. This process, this shedding of layers, is both painful and liberating. It is a death, yes, but also a necessary one. A death to all that you once thought you had to be in order to belong. What emerges from behind this mask is something more authentic, more whole. And though it is not always easy to accept, you come to see that this new you is not new at all. It is simply the real you, the one you have always been beneath the surface. This is where Jung's concept of the shadow becomes so important. The shadow is made up of those aspects of ourselves that we have repressed, denied or rejected, those parts of us that we were told were unacceptable or unlovable. And yet, these aspects are not inherently bad. They simply represent the parts of our psyche that we have cast out in order to maintain the image of who we believe we should be. The process of individuation, however, requires that we embrace these shadow aspects of ourselves, not as something to be ashamed of, but as integral parts of our whole being. As you begin to confront your own shadow, you may feel moments of discomfort, even guilt or fear. These parts of yourself, your anger, your desires, your suppressed emotions, may appear to you in ways you don't recognize, or perhaps they will show up as projections onto others. You may notice yourself feeling irritated or threatened by people who embody the qualities you've rejected in yourself. The key here is not to push these feelings away or to judge them. Instead, you must welcome them as messengers. They are showing you where your psyche is still fragmented, where the persona still exerts control, where you are still resisting your own wholeness. This confrontation with the shadow is not a one-time event. It is a process, an ongoing dance between the known and the unknown parts of yourself. As you grow more familiar with these parts, you begin to integrate them, allowing them to inform your decisions, your relationships, and your sense of purpose. You may find that the anger you once feared becomes a source of creative energy. Your desires, once deemed shameful, become sources of passion and vitality. The more you embrace these aspects, the more whole you become, and the more you align with the self, the core of who you truly are. In the Jungian framework, the next stage of this process often involves a confrontation with the anima or animus, the unconscious feminine or masculine aspects within the psyche. These archetypes represent the parts of ourselves that we have either suppressed or failed to integrate due to our gender identity, societal roles, or personal beliefs. If you are a woman, this might manifest as a deeper connection with your own feminine qualities, your intuition, your creativity, your capacity for emotional depth. As you embrace these qualities, you find yourself more fully embodied, more present, more alive. This confrontation with the anima is not always an easy one. It may involve breaking free from societal expectations of what it means to be a woman, or it may require you to dismantle internalized patriarchal beliefs about your worth or your role. But as you begin to listen to the voice of the anima, you discover a wellspring of wisdom and power that you may have been ignoring for years. This inner voice becomes your guide, helping you navigate the complexities of the external world with clarity and purpose. As you deepen into this process, you begin to experience a profound shift in how you relate to the world. No longer driven by the need to be liked or accepted, you begin to make decisions based on what feels true to you, not what others expect of you. This authenticity brings a certain kind of sovereignty, a quiet power that arises from knowing who you are and not needing anyone else's approval to validate it. At this stage, you may find yourself distancing from old patterns and relationships that no longer align with your growing sense of self. These relationships, while once significant, are now revealed to be tethered to the persona rather than the self. Letting go of them may be painful, but you know that it is necessary. As Jung wrote, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. This is the ultimate goal of individuation, to release the masks, the projections, and the false selves that you have carried for so long, and to stand fully in your truth. This process of shedding and embracing, of dying to the old and being reborn into the new, leads you to a place of psychological solitude. This solitude is not loneliness, it is a rich and fertile space, one where the voice of the self can be heard clearly. You begin to understand that true strength does not come from external validation, but from an internal alignment with your own essence. The more you cultivate this inner sovereignty, the less dependent you become on the approval of others. And yet, there is a paradox at play. While the process of individuation often leads to a kind of psychological loneliness, this loneliness is not a void. It is a space in which new possibilities can emerge. It is the fertile emptiness that Jung spoke of, a space where the old self has died, but the new one has not yet fully emerged. This is where the alchemy of transformation takes place. You no longer need external connections to define you. You have learned to be your own companion, to be your own validation, to stand alone without feeling lost. In this space, you may find that your relationships with others become more authentic, more deeply connected. The people who enter your life now are not those who are merely attracted to the persona you present, but those who resonate with your true self. These relationships, though fewer in number, are richer in depth. You may find that you no longer have to explain yourself, to justify your choices, or to fit into the expectations of others. Instead, you are free to be fully yourself. As you move deeper into this inner unfolding, something remarkable begins to occur. You start to sense the presence of what Jung called the collective unconscious, the vast transpersonal layer of the psyche that holds humanity's shared memories, symbols, and archetypes. At first, this awareness reveals itself subtly, like a whisper through your dreams or a sudden emotional resonance with stories, myths, and images far older than your individual life. You may dream of ancient landscapes, primordial figures, or symbolic encounters that feel strangely familiar, as if drawn from a memory that does not belong solely to you. This is not imagination in the ordinary sense. It is the psyche's attempt to reconnect you with the deeper strata of your being. In this space, the personal and collective begin to mingle. Certain patterns in your life, your attractions, your fears, your repeating relational dynamics, suddenly take on a broader significance. You begin to see that some of your deepest emotional currents are not merely yours. They are inherited, shaped by the stories of your family lineage and the archetypal patterns within the collective unconscious. Jung understood this transmission well. He wrote that the psyche does not belong exclusively to the individual, but is woven into a vast network of ancestral and cultural influences. For many women, this awakening brings with it a profound awareness of the feminine lineage, an intuitive recognition of the mothers, grandmothers, and great-grandmothers whose unspoken stories live silently within their bodies. You may begin to feel emotions that seem out of proportion to your life experiences, as if you are grieving or yearning on behalf of generations. These are not irrational moods. They are echoes of the unresolved traumas, suppressed desires, and silenced voices of the women who came before you. To feel these echoes is not a burden, it is an initiation. You are being invited to metabolize what they could not, to transform what they were forced to endure in silence into conscious experience. In this way, your individuation becomes not only personal but ancestral. It is often during this stage that the father complex emerges with clarity. The father complex, in Jungian psychology, refers to the internalized imprint of the paternal archetype, how authority, protection, discipline, and validation were experienced in childhood. You may find yourself recognizing how deeply your sense of worth, your ambition, your capacity to assert yourself, and your longing for approval have been shaped by your relationship with the father figure, whether present, absent, loving, distant, or unpredictable. This recognition is not meant to blame but to liberate. You begin to see the ways in which your life has been organized around an unconscious need for paternal validation, seeking approval from partners, employers, mentors, or society itself. As this recognition crystallizes, something loosens within you. The need to perform, to achieve, to prove yourself to an invisible authority begins to dissolve. You realize that you no longer need to earn your existence. This dissolution of the father complex is a profound moment in individuation. It marks the ego's liberation from patriarchal conditioning and its ascent toward the self. For perhaps the first time, you begin to live from your own authority, guided not by external standards, but by the quiet certainty of your inner knowing. With this liberation, eros, the life force, begins to awaken. Jung used the term libido not merely to describe sexual desire, but as the fundamental energy of the psyche, the vitality that animates creativity, passion, intuition, and the desire for connection. As you reclaim your inner authority, this life force grows stronger. You may feel a renewed sense of curiosity, a heightened sensitivity to beauty, or a quiet longing to express parts of yourself that have been dormant for years. This eros does not arise from the need to be seen or desired by others. It arises from a deeper well, the self's desire to become fully realized in the world. This newfound energy can feel exhilarating, but it can also feel destabilizing. As your creative libido awakens, old structures in your life, relationships, careers, habits, may begin to feel constrictive, unable to contain the growing expansiveness within you. It is here, in this tension between the old and the new, that the transcendent function begins to operate. The transcendent function, in Jungian terms, is the psyche's ability to hold opposing forces long enough for a new, more integrated solution to emerge. Instead of choosing between comfort and transformation, between belonging and authenticity, you learn to contain the tension until it becomes generative. This capacity to hold the tension marks the turning point in your individuation. You are no longer driven by unconscious complexes or trapped in inherited patterns. Instead, you navigate life with a growing inner steadiness. You observe your thoughts and emotions without being swallowed by them. You witness the drama of others without losing your center. This is not detachment, it is maturity. It is the quiet confidence that comes from knowing that your inner world is no longer at the mercy of the external one. And then, almost imperceptibly, you feel the emergence of a new kind of selfhood, a selfhood that is both ancient and newborn. The ego, once so preoccupied with appearances and expectations, begins to align with the self, the deep-rooted center of wisdom within you. This alignment is not a moment of triumph, but one of surrender. You surrender the need to control outcomes, to fit into predetermined roles, to seek validation from others. In this surrender, you discover something extraordinary, the freedom to simply be. This freedom is not loud. It does not announce itself with declarations or dramatic gestures. It appears in the quiet way you make decisions, in the calmness with which you decline invitations that drain you, in the presence you bring to relationships that nourish you. It reveals itself in your ability to sit with solitude without fear and to embrace silence without discomfort. This is sovereignty, not dominance, not independence for its own sake, but a deep and unwavering loyalty to your own inner truth. From this sovereignty, a new relationship with the world begins to unfold. You no longer move through life seeking belonging. You move through life knowing that you belong to yourself. Your presence becomes a kind of invitation, an unspoken message to others that they too can live without masks, without fear, without the endless pursuit of external validation. In this way, your individuation contributes to the collective. By embodying your true nature, you become a catalyst for others to discover theirs. This is how the collective unconscious evolves, not through grand revolutions but through the quiet courage of individuals who dare to be whole. As the path unfolds before you, the final movement of this inner journey reveals itself, not as a dramatic climax, but as a gradual, steady homecoming. It is here, in this quiet ascent, that you begin to understand the true meaning of psychological altitude. You have descended into the depths of your own unconscious, faced the shadows that once frightened you, confronted the ancestral patterns that shaped your behavior, and released the invisible demands of the father complex. Now you rise, not by effort, not by striving, but by the natural buoyancy of a psyche that has shed its unnecessary weight. This rising brings with it a paradoxical experience, a profound loneliness that is anything but empty. It is a loneliness that belongs to those who have awakened while the world around them continues to sleep. This is not the loneliness of exile, but of altitude. You feel yourself standing on a high ridge of consciousness, looking out over the landscape of your life with a clarity you never possessed before. The familiar roads, the old emotional territories, the patterns and dramas that once ensnared you, they are still visible, but they no longer hold power over you. They are part of your story, but not your destiny. In this elevated solitude, you become aware of something essential, that the goal of individuation was never to escape the world, but to return to it as someone transformed. The descent into the underworld, the confrontation with the shadow, the integration of the anima, the liberation from ancestral complexes, all of this was preparation. Preparation for a life lived not from instinct or fear, but from the steady center of the self. And yet, even as you return to the world, you do so differently. You no longer enter rooms hoping to be liked. You do not shrink yourself to ease the discomfort of others. You do not offer pieces of your soul in exchange for validation. Instead, you walk into the world with a quiet but unmistakable presence. People feel it before they understand it. They sense that you are someone who cannot be manipulated by praise nor diminished by criticism. Someone who carries an untouchable inner equilibrium. This presence affects others, though rarely in ways that are immediately obvious. Some feel unsettled, confronted by the reflection of their own unlived life. Others feel drawn to you, sensing in your authenticity a permission they have long awaited. Without trying, you become a mirror for those around you. Your authenticity awakens theirs. Your steadiness calms their chaos. Your refusal to betray yourself shows them that they too can stop betraying themselves. This is the quiet influence of the individuated soul. Not dominance, not persuasion, but resonance. Over time, your life becomes a constellation of meaningful connections rather than a crowd of superficial ones. You find kinship not in those who simply agree with you, but in those who recognize you. These relationships may be few, but they are soul deep. For the first time, you feel seen not for what you provide, but for who you are. And in this recognition, you uncover a truth you may have suspected, but never fully understood, that the self does not seek love in order to feel whole. It seeks love in order to express its wholeness. And so you give love differently now, not from desperation, not from longing, but from abundance. You create from a deeper source, live with a softer intensity, speak with greater care. You find that your solitude and your connections coexist in harmony, each enhancing the other. The world no longer dictates your inner state. Instead, your inner state shapes the way you meet the world. Eventually, this journey brings you back to yourself, back to the one who began this process unaware of the transformation awaiting her. But she is no longer who she was. The one who stands here now has died and been reborn many times. She has walked through the darkness without losing her flame. She has learned that her sensitivity is not a flaw, but a compass. She has discovered that her silence is not emptiness, but wisdom. And she has realized that her loneliness is not an absence, but a gateway to profound inner companionship. It is here, at this threshold of completion and beginning, that the central truth of individuation reveals itself. The self is not something you find, it is something you remember. It is who you were before the world told you who to be, and who you become again when you finally stop running from your own depth. If you feel something in these words, if you recognize your own journey in the images and insights shared here, I invite you to stay connected. Like this video, share it with someone whose inner life you honor, subscribe if you wish to continue exploring Jungian depth psychology and feminine consciousness, and leave a comment describing which part of this journey resonates most deeply with you. Your reflection may become the synchronicity someone else needs.